Okay, welcome back.
This is Roadmap to Retirement. Looking back on 2024, here are clips from the top episodes. Thank you to all the guests that have joined and to all the listeners for tuning in. See you in 2025. Here is episode 2 with John Sheldon, talking about how the financial industry has changed over the years.
To make it a really simple answer, why do people leave their advisor? I think it is 95% of the time about communication. It is very rarely anything to do with a rate of return or the fintech software you're using. It is a lot of times you hear clients say, I haven't heard from my guy or my girl in a year, 5 years, or something terrible like that. For myself, I can say that's not the case. I know my clients hear from me on a regular basis. We take pride in that. But that's usually the number one reason somebody is leaving their advisor is just lack of communication.
I 100% agree. And I would say lack of communication and lack of understanding or listening on the advisor's part. Like I know I was victim to that back in the day. Absolutely. I was victim to that where maybe I totally didn't understand what my client really wanted. And asking better questions and actually listening to them would have solved a lot of the issues that they may have had. Right. I think you're right. I can't remember a client that ever left me because of rate of return, right, or performance. I had a lot of clients call and ask about that and be concerned with maybe market trend, but I don't think I've ever lost a client that way. That usually is the start, though, of some discontent between you and the client. If they're calling you and being pretty aggressive of why your portfolio is down, you probably haven't done a good enough job of building that relationship and educating your client.
This clip is from episode 6 on cybersecurity with Dr. Christopher Mansour and Dr. Jordan Hutchinson.
So a different kind of financial scam that seems to be becoming more abundant is the AI voice imitation. So for those of you that don't know what this is, it's effectively you getting a call from somebody that you think you know and love and them saying, hey, I'm in a tough spot. I need $1,000. Can you send it to this address or can you Venmo it or whatever it might be? And the AI is getting to a point where they can very effectively mimic a voice and it will sound like it's your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, whoever it is. What are your guys' thoughts on that? And what are some things we can do to protect ourselves?
Yeah, I'll say that I know this situation very well because it actually happened to a close friend. And it was a phone call that went to his grandmother. And it was quite scary because a lot of times retirees are going to be the people that they're going to go after for these situations. And they called and were saying that they were in another country, they were needing this, and they were just in distress. And it got the grandmother, very worked up and very uncomfortable, scared. And it's one of those moments where it is scary that there's that ability out there. But I always tell people, and some people think it's funny in some ways, but always have some way, like in those situations, to know that it is truly them. Like you can ask them a question, or some situations in financial firms, I know people have added like a code word to make sure that they're getting a phone call from the right people. It could be something as quirky as like blueberry pancakes. If that's your code word that's on file with your advisor, then they know that if there's a scam that you could say it. There's stuff like that I know that a lot of people have implemented. Or if it is a phone number that you can call them back, make sure you're calling back the number. It is very scary, but there's tons of policies and procedures that we put in place to try to mitigate that so that you're not stuck in that situation.
From Olympic medals to financial wisdom, this is episode 17 with Paul Kingsman.
Don't get emotional about it. It can be very hard to get people to see that. And I think the way you phrase is correct. You got to block out the noise, do what's in your best interest, and maybe just don't watch the news might be a good thing.
But here's part of the noise, Alex. You imagine, and this is where our industry, where the finance industry differs a little, unfortunately. We every single day at the top of the paper or at the top of the web page or whatever we've got, we're seeing stock market results and what it did yesterday and what's happening globally. Imagine if every single morning, coming back to the surgery analysis, imagine if every single morning we saw every single result of every single knee surgery. After a while, everybody'd be walking around, hey, I know how to do knee surgery. In fact, I might do my own tomorrow. and it's that same kind of thing. People just don't realize, they don't recognize it like that. It's the same kind of thing with finances.
Sure.
And so, unfortunately, because of all that noise, they tend to overlook and devalue advisors like yourself who no, this is what I do. This is my specialist field, just like a knee surgeon. And so people get familiar with everything and commentaries and what have you. And then, immediately they think this isn't that hard. Well,
Right.
it is.
It
It's
is, and I think the surgery example is good. I've heard other people use the example of like real estate or their house. One of the
Right.
nice things about investing in real estate is you don't wake up every morning, log into your account and see a value. Whereas with
That's
what we
right.
do, you can check your 401k 5 times a day if you want to, and now you're like, oh no, it's up 2%, it's down 2%. You get emotional about it.
New Year's resolution. Listen to more podcasts. Here is episode 24 with Tyrone White Jr.
You talk a lot about with your clients is making a plan sustainable. So what I mean is from a budgeting standpoint or a saving standpoint, I think a lot of people, they run at the finances, right? Maybe it's a New Year's resolution. They're all jacked up. They're excited. They want to save more money. This is the year everything's gonna be different. So they go from saving maybe $0 a month to they want to save $1,000 a month. So they go 0 to 60. And then what happens with their New Year's resolution is by the time we get into February, it's blown up, it's over, and they're back to the exact same habits they had before. So you and I agree that part of the goal should be building a sustainable plan that might be making goals that are small enough to achieve and start to feel good about it. What are some things that go into that sustainable plan?
It is. It's making a plan that, like we talked about, is sustainable. Because, and I want to say, I'm going back to the beginning because I want to make it clear for everybody. Because I know some people probably maybe do what I do, but there's some people starting out. So one of the biggest mistakes I did when I was starting out, I want to share my mistakes, is I was focusing on trying to show that, hey, if we do this, we can save all this money. We can save all this money. And I started realizing that's not the point of this. The point of this is to get to the goal. That's the point. It's not to try to save as much money as soon as possible. The goal is to set up a plan that you can do for years, maybe months, maybe years, but be sustainable. And I realized, maybe we can save $1,000, but we save $700, and we can do that over the next few years. That's way better than trying to do 1,000 and the person stops. The goal should be try to keep the person in some type of budget or some type of system that makes them have progress. And I started focusing on more about progression than perfection, because the progression will get you to where you want to get.
Here's episode 29, Politics and Portfolios with Ashley Sullivan.
I love how you had titled it like, does my portfolio care? Your portfolio does not care, right? We were just talking about stats jokingly before this, and it is truly neck and neck if a Democrat or a Republican is president, especially if Congress is divided, right? There's checks and balances. That means one political party is not getting through all their policies, truly. And that data goes back to 1922. So very long spanning to say it does not matter.
Sure.
I know we internalize it to matter, right? Because we're saying this person wants this to happen and I feel this way strongly. So it's natural. I think a tendency as being human is to want to align with some type of affiliation, a group, but it does not matter for your portfolio.
It's hard to, you talk about 100 years of history that we're pulling it from, which sounds like a lot. And in some ways that's a pretty good sample size, but also that's only 25 elections. So it's really not, it might not be enough to say that there's a strong trend either way, but when we look at the numbers and how they come out, we see it's pretty much neck and neck. And then you consider all the anomalies that happen within an election cycle.
Right.
Recently we had COVID, which was a game changer, right? We talked before about Obama administration taking over at the bottom of a recession. So how does that project forward? And if you take over at the rock bottom, you're almost always going to look good from an investment standpoint.
Here's why you need life insurance. Episode 31 with Amanda Harbat.
It's really an act of love. It's an act of service. And that's how I see it. And I think it's my job as an insurance professional to convey that to either advisors who I'm working with or their clients, to help them to understand that it really is an act of service to their family. That's the final thing that they'll be able to provide.
Sure. It's offering peace of mind to their family, and it's selfless in its act, because I have a friend that likes to make a joke that life insurance is a scam because you die and then they pay you and you're dead. Of course, but you're paying for the other people. So it's selfless in that act.
Absolutely.
And then I think we can break down people into a couple categories and I'll just broadly say there's people that need life insurance. There's people that don't need it, but maybe they want it. You can borrow for college, but you can't borrow for retirement. So maybe your kid will have to take student loans out, and maybe you don't love that idea, but it might just be the best option for everybody.
We've had a few of 6 Point colleagues on. This is episode 28 with our very own Nick Savas.
Yeah, and we do tell people that, but I do think it's true, because you really can't, right? So if at the end of the day, if your son or daughter wants to go to school, there are means to be able to pay for that now whether even if it's having to take out debt, those mechanisms don't exist for retirement planning, right? You can't just go to the bank and get a loan to say, hey, I want to retire. So yeah, the goals and the priorities are first and foremost, and then we can start to plan from there.
Let's say that in a perfect world, we've addressed our own retirement. We're saving plenty of money there. We have no concern at all about our own ability to retire in the future. And now we want to turn our attention to helping our children.
Yep.
I'm going to tease a little bit further, and we're still going to push the college savings down one more step. I think there's a big elephant in the room that needs to be addressed before you save for college, and that's the insurance world.
And there were times where it was a solo episode to talk about the favorite tax planning. Don't miss episode 15.
If you don't go on Medicare quickly enough, or you don't sign up on time, they do charge a penalty on that. It is a 10% premium penalty that is enforced for the rest of your life. So once you get that penalty, you're going to continue it forever, and you want to make sure that you avoid that. It gets very expensive. Right now, the Medicare premium is, I think, $174 a month per individual. So if you have a 10% penalty on, that's an extra $17 per month every year. If you calculate that over a 30-year retirement, it does get pretty expensive. So we want to be cautious of that. The next sort of tax thing, I think this one's very common. This is probably the biggest question that we get from clients is, it's okay, Alex, I've done a great job saving for retirement, me and my spouse, however it works out. We've got X amount of dollars in this account. We've got an IRA, a Roth IRA. We've got a non-qualified account. We've got income coming from an investment property. We've got all these different kinds of income streams or different kinds of accounts that we can pull money from. And the question is, which account should I take money out of first?
And most recently, the fan favorite so far, episode 37 with John Howe Wimett, crafting your career as a young advisor.
The message for a young person who wants to get into this business is to focus less on, is it an insurance broker dealer? Is it a wirehouse? Is it a bank? Whatever it is, and focus more on, is the person sitting across the table from you in an interview somebody that is going to be a good mentor to you?
Yeah.
And put the time and invest into you. And also, do they know what they're doing? And that's really hard to distinguish when you're, again, starting off in the career and you don't know a lot.
Yeah.
How do you sit there and judge the person that's interviewing you on whether or not they even know how to run a business or how to do financial planning?
Agreed. Which is why that vocabulary is really important too. Exposing yourself to industry experts. I'm a big Michael Kitces fan, and I listen to the Financial Advisor Success podcasts all the time. I've probably listened to a couple hundred of them at this point, and and even that is a perfect way to understand what's possible, what's out there. It's like a foreign language, right? The more you immerse yourself in the language of financial planning, the more you know what questions to ask to identify if the team that you're interviewing with or the person that you're sitting across from could be a good mentor. But yeah, just knowing what you need to know is a huge step.
That wraps up our 2024 highlights. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Roadmap to Retirement. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Alexander Neri. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Alexander Neri or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Alexander Neri and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.